we're mostly not that good of people. So we've got to have consequences. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Cabin Checks. My name is Brandon Burns, and today I've got a concept for you that I think is going to help take your execution to a completely new level. Of course, we all know that ideas, phenomenal, as great as they are, they're a dime a dozen. And until you execute on those ideas, they really don't mean a whole lot in the real world, right? Same thing with your intentions. You can have the best intentions in the world, but until they become a reality, how much do they really mean? Personally, I don't know. I don't think that it's the thought that counts. The thought counts a little bit, but at the end of the day, whether you're talking about your own personal life and your personal goals, whether you're talking about your business financially, or whether you're talking about just relationships with other people, at the end of the day, to be truthful, it really is the results that mean the most. And I want to teach you this concept that helps me get better results. But before I even get into it, I want to illustrate this to you with something that actually just happened to me literally yesterday. I was in the gym. I was at Crunch working out. I do tend to do that every single day because every day means every day. If you don't know what that means, go check out some of my other videos. But I was in the gym, I was working out, and I decided to go in. It was a chest day, and I was going to start on the machines, just a machine chest press. And I was steadily increasing the weight because I've got some shoulder issues. I tend to prefer to warm up on the machine press before I go over to the barbell, because as much as I am a stickler for form, unfortunately sometimes it happens where I start to throw my chest out too much. I push down instead of straight above me, and all the crazy stuff that you're not supposed to do, and it ends up hurting my rotator cuff. Anybody that knows gymnastics, especially men's gymnastics, knows that all of our rotator cuffs, and labrums for that matter, are just shredded. So I got to be really careful when I do barbell bench. So I was going to go warm up on the machine press, and I just started knocking out sets. I had a lot of energy that day. Started knocking out sets back to back to back to back, very little rest time, steadily increasing the weight until I maxed out the machine, right? And I noticed, I became conscious of something as I shifted from the machine press over to the actual barbell bench press. I was on my own. I didn't have anybody there to spot me. And I realized that I wasn't tracking my rest periods. I used to be a stickler on that too. I've gotten a little bit more casual with that as I've progressed in my own fitness journey, but I've gotten a little bit more relaxed on tracking that, hardcore tracking my rest times. But I noticed intuitively that I was resting a lot more when I went to the barbell bench as opposed to when I was on the machine. And I sat there and I thought to myself, well, why in the world would I do that? Because I started at a lower weight. Like, I went all the way up until I maxed out the machine on the machine press. Then I went over the barbell, started at a lower weight, and still was resting more. And you could make the argument, well, you've already done, 4 or 5 sets on the machine press before you got over to the barbell, so you were just tired. Great idea, not the truth though. Like, that's not why I was actually doing it. I sat there and I thought about, man, I don't feel like I need to rest that much more. Why am I subconsciously, intuitively taking more time for myself to rest before every set now that I've moved over here? And the answer was because of the consequences. It was because of the consequences. On the machine press, if I hit muscle failure, I just go, let go of it, let the machine fall back, get my arm out of the way, and then we're good to go. But there's no real danger to me. The consequence of pushing a little too far, the consequence of being a little bit reckless with the form, the consequence of maybe not paying close enough attention to my rest period and doing my next set before I really should have, it wasn't a very high consequence. It was almost a negligible, irrelevant consequence, because I knew that I could just get rid of the machine, to take my hand off of it, and then I'm good to go, right? Whereas on the barbell, if I hit failure or if I'm sloppy with my form, now I got to worry about, am I going to tear something? Now I got to worry about, am I going to drop the bar on my chest and break a rib? Now I got to worry about, am I going to get stuck underneath this thing? And it's going to be 30 seconds before somebody else around me notices, it comes and helps me out and picks the bar up, and I can get out from underneath that thing, right? The consequence was far greater when I moved over to the barbell bench. And so it made me start to think about, man, if let's just take a couple different examples, right? Let's say in business. Let's say that I want to start something brand new. I want to learn how to, let's say I want to learn a new skill. Let's say I've already got a business. Maybe I'm a coach and I want to learn a new skill. I want to learn how to run Facebook ads or something like that, right? And I don't even teach this. So this is literally a pure example. It's not trying to subconsciously sell you on something. But let's just say I want to go learn how to run Facebook ads. And I look around on YouTube and I find a couple of free videos and I get my education for free. How much of a consequence is there for me not executing on the information? A waste of 60 minutes or 2 hours or 3 hours or however much time I invested into learning the skill from watching those videos on YouTube. But that's the only consequence. And of course you could say, well, there's an opportunity cost of not getting the revenue into your business from, actually executing on the information and running the ads properly. But all in all, I don't have that much sunk into it. Like I don't have that high of an investment. So the consequence isn't very high. Now, let's say that I had gone and paid $10,000 for a course or $10,000 for one-on-one mentoring and coaching to learn that skill. Now, all of a sudden, I've also got the opportunity cost. I've also got the time that I spent to learn it. But now I'm invested. I paid to play. I can't, like 10 grand, I can't have that go to waste. Now there's a real consequence because I'm thinking, dang, that's a down payment on a nice car. 10 grand, that's a heck of a trip to Europe or something. Like I'm starting to think about like, man, what did I waste if I don't execute on what I spent this money for, right? So that's a business example. Let me give you a relationship example. Let's say that you have a significant other and you want to implement some kind of rule, right? Like, hey, we keep arguing over, I don't know, the dishes. We keep arguing over the dishes. It's important to us that the dishes get done. And so I feel super disrespected and not heard or seen because, you just don't care about the dishes and you don't care about what I care about, whatever, right? And then the other person is like, I truly don't care. It doesn't make a difference to me. I don't even notice. Like I forget about it, right? And so they come together and they say, hey, let's make a rule that I want it done immediately. You don't even care about doing it at all. Let's meet in the middle. Let's say every 72 hours, somebody has to do the dishes, right? And we just go on and like, I'll do it once every 72 hours and then you do it the next 72 hours. Let that be the rule in our relationship. I'm not a relationship counselor. I'm not telling you that's how you should operate in a marriage or anything like that. I'm just throwing out an example, okay? If that's the rule that y'all come up with and then there's no consequence to it, like imagine this for a second. Imagine that that's the rule that you come up with. And if you don't do the dishes when it's your turn to do the dishes, you know for a fact that the other person in this relationship is not going to be mad, is not going to get upset, they're not going to yell at you, they're not going to withhold any of your privileges that they're not going to start treating you differently, right? Like everything stays exactly the same. How inclined are you to follow that rule? Like you got to be, and let's be honest with ourselves, we're all going to want to sit here and say, well, I would follow that rule because that's what we agreed to and because I care about the other person and I'm just such a great person, that's what I'm going to do no matter what else is going on and no matter how little I care about it. Come on. We're mostly not that good of people just inherently. You might do it for a week or 2 weeks or a month or 2 months, but eventually if there's truly no consequences, you're going to hit a point where it's not the highest thing on my priority list. I'll get to it later. It's not that important, right? So we've got to have consequences for anything in life. You want to have a goal. Hey, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, right? Let's say I have a fitness goal. I'm going to lose 20 pounds in the next 2 months. Bet. What's the consequence for not hitting it? And I don't want just, oh, well, I don't hit my goal. That's consequence enough. No, it's not. Otherwise, you would have lost 20 pounds already. What's the actual consequence? Like you owe somebody $200 if you don't lose the 20 pounds. That's a real consequence, right? It's got to be an amount that is meaningful to you. Again, I'm just throwing out random examples here, but I need you to figure this stuff out. So if I were going to put this into a formula, right? The execution boosting formula, here is how you can ensure that you actually take action on a lot of the information that you're learning or a lot of the goals that you have, the rules that you're setting, the standards, the procedures, all of that good stuff. You've got to have a consequence. What's crazy, before I even get to this formula, and this is just coming to me right now, is every high performance environment that I've ever been a part of, they had consequences. Like when I was both when I was an athlete and when I was coaching on the gymnastics team at Michigan, you can't just not show up for practice and then expect for there not to be a consequence. Like, the reinforcement that ensures, the insurance policy that you will actually show up on time, is that for every minute that you are late, not every 10 minutes, not every hour that you're late, every 60 seconds that you're late, you have a rope climb. So you're 5 minutes late, you're going up that thing 5 times in a row, no rest. Figure it out. That sucks. Nobody wants to be late, right? And you're going to get dogged out by your teammates, and the coaches are going to yell at you. There's consequences. Every high-performance environment is like that. I don't care if it's a sports team, if it's a company, every high-performance relationship, every high-performance environment is like that. So here's the formula. If you want to execute this in your own life, here's the formula. Step number 1, define the consequences. Basic, easy. Step number 1, define clearly, articulate what the consequences are. The kicker here is don't stop at the first order consequences. Talk about the second order and the third order consequences of the situation. So let's go back to the relationship example, right? Doing the dishes every 72 hours. You need to have a conversation with your significant other and say, hey, if this does not get done, right? Step number 1, first order consequence. Here's what's going to happen, right? And maybe you make something up. Hey, you got to put $5 in the date night jar, right? That way it's still kind of like it's nice, it's productive. It's not like you just dogging the other person out. It's like, okay, hey, you forget to do it. You got to put $5 in the date night jar, and then at the end of the month, we go and spend it and we go do something together. It's still a consequence, but we're not going too far into the negative reinforcement zone. But let's think about the second order consequence. First order consequence, not that deep. Second order consequence, honestly, I'm not really going to trust you because I don't think that you hold your word. Like, your word doesn't seem to have that much value because, you say that you're going to adhere to this rule and to this standard, and then you don't do it. So we got to fix that. So now I don't really trust you the way that I should. That's the second order consequence. What's the third order consequence? Well, when I don't trust somebody, emotionally, my walls kind of go up, and I don't really connect with you that much. And that's going to cause a lot of problems deeper in our relationship. Like, now we're not talking the same way. We're not interacting the same way. I don't feel as safe and as comfortable around you. Like, go in detail about that. And again, I'm not saying that is something that you should dwell on. I think there's a very fine line here. You need to have realistic conversations about, hey, this is the real life situation. If these things don't happen, here's how I'm going to feel. Here's how it's going to affect us, right? Same thing with your business. Same thing with your personal goals. Hey, you don't lose the 20 pounds. Step number 1, first order consequence. You owe somebody, you owe your friend, you owe your trainer, whatever, $200. Okay, great. What's the second order consequence? You let you down. You know that your word means nothing to you. You have a lower reputation with yourself. Your self-esteem takes a hit. What's the third order consequence? The rest of your habits and routines in your life are not going to be up to par and up to standard because you already have proven the precedent that you're willing to let yourself down. And so you can keep going, so on and so forth. Third order, fourth order, fifth order consequences of these things. Now other people around you respect you less. Now you get less opportunities. Now, you can keep going with this as far as you want. Again, fine line. We're not going to dwell on those things and use them as oh my God, the world's going to end, the sky's going to fall if I don't execute on this. But you do need to have a realistic understanding of here's what can happen if I let myself down. That's step number 1. Define the consequences, not just the first order consequences, but all the way down the line. Step number 2, define the specific criteria for when these consequences happen. If you think of, again, high performance environments, high performance teams, if you have again, let's just take the sports team example. It was very, very clear. We started practice at 2:45. If you walk in at 2:47, you climb the rope 2 times, period, end of story. There's a very specific criteria that is easily understandable and easily communicated for when these consequences will take place. What constitutes you suffering the consequences? That's another way of thinking about it. Right? If you are in a business, if you're an employee of a company and your boss comes to you and says, hey, we don't think that you're performing up to par, we need you to do X, Y, and Z. It's called a PIP, Performance Improvement Plan. If you don't hit this benchmark, and this benchmark within the next 2 weeks, then you're out of here, right? So again, consequence is what? You're fired. What's the specific criteria in which that consequence takes place? If you don't make at least 20 sales calls, close 5 deals, and again, whatever those criteria are going to be subject to the individual circumstance, but you have to have specific criteria and you've got to know what those things are. Like, a consequence doesn't hold a lot of weight if it's this abstract notion in your mind and you don't really know when it's going to take place, how, like, what's going to happen, how bad is it going to hurt. Like, you need to understand the specifics and internalize that in order for it to really move you. All right, that's step number 2, define the specific criteria for when the consequence takes place. Step number 3, define exactly how to avoid the consequences. So when we were on the team in Michigan, head coach, shout out Kirk Galder, he would always say, hey, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late. What was he doing? He was instilling a method, because again, we've kind of been on the negative reinforcement side, and now we shifted into positive reinforcement. Well, what do we do about these consequences? Hey, if you just show up 5 minutes early every time, you give yourself some buffer, and then you'll always be good no matter what. So if you're not 5 minutes early, probably going to be late. Boom, there's a strategy to avoid the consequences. Same thing with, let's say, a company, right? You work for a company, hey, you make 20 sales calls a week, you're going to be good. Like, you're definitely going to close enough, you're going to be fine, like, you're going to be on target, you're going to hit your quota, everything's going to be great, right? You don't have anything to worry about if you adhere to these standards and principles. So define specifically how can you avoid the consequence. Bonus points if you can make a routine out of that. If you can routinize that in some way, if you can standardize that in some way and form a habit out of it, even better, all right? So again, that's just a quick lesson that I learned from being in the gym yesterday and just being observant of my own behavior and trying to understand the underlying reasons and dynamics behind that behavior. It illuminated this for me. I think this is one of those concepts that we all understand intuitively at a certain level. However, how many of us really bring that up to the surface level of our consciousness and say, hey, here's something that I'm going to actively, consciously work on executing in the real world? I think very, very few of us. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Give this method a try and let me know how it works for you in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and share. And of course, go check out the other videos. If you like this one, check out the other videos on the channel because we got a ton more just like this to help you level up in every area of your life. I appreciate you for watching. It means the world to me. My name is Brandon Burns, and I will see you on the next episode of Cabin Checks.